It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He's Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we introduce Thursday, March 13th. Gary, what's happening?
Well, I'm talking to a bunch of my Republican friends yesterday, and of course, they were all saying, God, Trump does so many great things, but why does he do this? And I just looked at them, and I just answered back. I said, better than Kamala.
Yeah.
And I'm in a group text with people, and I kept saying, better than Kamala.
Right.
And then I wrote back, I said, better than Kamala. BTK.
Yeah.
I went, oh, wait a minute. That was a serial killer.
Oh, yeah.
I got to come up with something else. Probably not the thing to be putting consistently.
Can't use that one.
Yes.
Although there were some torturous moments in the Kamala campaign. Yeah.
It was just...
yeah. But no, I think...
always remember that. Better than Kamala.
That's right.
Better than Kamala.
Right.
Now, I did say... I wasn't thinking. I went, well, it's better than Biden. They went, he didn't run, Gary. It was Kamala. I go, oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot.
It's so weird to think back on it.
Isn't it? Yeah.
It is so weird. They made, was it HBO that did the thing on the rift between Letterman and Leno? And was it called Late Night? And it was like a little limited mini-series or movie or something. So they did the whole drama between Leno and Letterman when Letterman left and all of that. How could they not do a series based on just the 2024 campaign season alone? Just carve out the entire year and do a series on that. I'd watch that all day.
Well, it would be entertaining.
Oh my gosh. And then the behind the scenes, because I'm thinking, that late night show was that they did, had a lot of, I don't know, kind of over the top, maybe exaggerated stuff about what was going on behind the scenes. And I'd love for those stories to be told if anybody's willing to tell them what was going on behind the scenes, in the Kamala campaign, in the Biden thing, after he's kicked to the curb and leading up to being kicked to the curb. Those things like that fascinate me all day long because we're waiting. I'm just waiting for Biden to just do the tell-all of all tell-alls. Now, I don't think he has the wherewithal to write it anymore. So that would require somebody, Jill or Hunter or both, helping him write it.
I think that you want to retire. Put your name. Forget about the source books because somebody's going to come out with the source book.
Yeah.
So I don't know, from Politico or Wall Street Journal or wherever, going to come out with a book saying, here's what our sources say happened.
Yeah.
No. You want to retire for the rest of your life because nobody cares.
Right.
Not even any Democrat cares about Biden anymore. They look at Biden and say, this guy lost it. They look at Kamala. Yeah. They look at Biden. They may sit there and go, we don't know who else we have.
Right.
Well, you may have Rahm Emanuel. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit. But nobody cares. So you could come forward and say, what happened was indefensible, and I'm writing a book on it. Could you imagine I'm writing a book, who was in charge? Or AutoPen, who was in charge?
Who held the AutoPen?
And you put your name to it.
Yeah.
Don't have a reporter do a source book.
No.
You do it now. You can get a ghostwriter.
No, right.
You do that, but you put your name to it, and I don't know who that would be, but you put your name to it. What kind of an advance would you get? Because, well, we get promotional copies, but I would actually buy that book and talk about that book.
Forget it.
Especially on the book tour. It's like, well, he wasn't in charge. Who was actually directing him, and the auto pen was used because he didn't know what he was talking about. So this aide or this family member was actually the one doing it. My God, you're talking about there would be a movie at that point.
Oh no,
because that would actually become that would probably even overshadow the Russia collusion hoax.
Yeah,
it would overshadow that, the censoring, everything that went in. It would overshadow that because people would be fascinated and say, "My God, for the last 2 years or 3 years, whatever it would be, of the Biden administration, he wasn't even in charge at all." And that would even, and the best thing is, then the Republicans would have the evidence in front of them in a book.
Yeah,
to sit
exactly.
there and do the congressional hearings on it. I mean, that's really fascinating when you look at the auto pen story because everyone knows. You and I talked about it. It went back, and I forgot what the issue was militarily speaking. And we said, do you actually think that Biden understands what's going on in the Middle East? Do you think he has the cognitive ability to know what's going on? Everybody saw what was happening. The Democrats denied it until they couldn't deny it anymore because it was so obvious. And I think at that point they just said, okay, they knew his cognitive abilities were gone.
Right.
It's been reported already, the source stories. They all knew.
Well,
I mean, Wall Street Journal had the article on it.
Yep.
And it was just like, we all know it.
Jake Tapper would fight you on it up until he wrote the book about it. You know, I mean, think about that.
Right, until he wrote the book on how they covered it up.
Exactly.
Right.
And so this is, I think of the book and it became a movie, Primary Colors, which was about Clinton, but it wasn't about Clinton. It was about Clinton. And and it wasn't even, you know, if you think about it, it really wasn't much of a tell-all. It was just a drama thing. It was just kind of, I actually thought it was kind of boring. You know, I mean, for what we knew in real life, or maybe back then suspected about Bill Clinton. But if the Biden tell-all came out, I mean, it would be monstrous.
Yeah.
Because the first thing you would do, if you're a studio, you get in the bidding war for the rights to that movie or series. You're going to have to take it and just run with it. And it would be probably one of the most fascinating reads. Here's the asterisk. Joe Biden's a wholly dishonest person. So, you know, you go through chapter 1, you're going, oh, this is good. Chapter 2, and Corn Pop comes back. You know what I mean? It's like, wait a minute. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're talking about Joe Biden.
Well, Biden's not writing it. It's got to be somebody else.
Biden
can't write it. It's got to be someone else.
As I said, where I began, he doesn't have the cognitive issues or cognitive abilities to do this. It would have to be Jill and or Hunter. And
no, can't be a family member. It's got to be somebody inside his chief of staff or somebody inside the White House that is separate from the family, because you couldn't trust anybody from the family. You couldn't trust it, and they're not going to write that. It's the family. Yeah. You would need somebody who was inside the White House for a significant period of time that would know who was actually influencing him, which might be one of his chiefs of staff or whatever.
Well, it would have to be Jake Sullivan. I mean, right?
Yeah.
If it's going to be anybody but Biden himself
or someone else, there's 10, 15, 20 people around him every single day. Karine Jean-Pierre. But then again, you couldn't believe her, especially if the book, because if you're going to do it, like if you're Karine Jean-Pierre and write the book, people are going to say, well, then you lied. You just destroyed your resume. Mm-hmm. Because it's like, oh, okay, you're just admitting that you lied and covered this up and you knew that he wasn't in charge. Well, so it's got to be somebody behind the scenes.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that anybody who writes it was a part of it. Yeah. It's just, the same way we went after Jake Tapper. It's like, dude, you were defending Biden. And now you're writing the book about how they covered it up.
How's that book selling, I wonder?
I don't know.
I'll have to go look at that.
I don't know. That one I have no interest in,
But
other than the story of how it came to be.
What I thought was interesting was the stories that the media are bringing up that they feel that they have to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
We had mentioned the Rosie O'Donnell thing, really for entertainment purposes only.
Yeah,
entertainment. Right. I mean, the whole thing yesterday that I saw, which was hilarious, was, well, you've got her now. If you send her back, we're putting a tariff on her.
Right.
Exactly. That was just
She's
great.
yours.
But this is Kevin O'Leary on CNN. This was just great yesterday on this. Here we go.
Who gives a
Thank you.
beep about Rosie O'Donnell and where she wants to go? I don't care what celebrities think about politicians or who they want to vote for. I think the last election proved it doesn't matter who you are.
You are a celebrity.
Yeah,
Opinion
really.
on politics.
Who cares what I think in terms of my picking a politician or who I vote for? You make your own decision. If she wants to move to Phnom Penh, move to Phnom Penh. She wants to go to Ireland, great. It's a better passport. You get an EU passport, not the British one. It's better. But who gives a beep?
Exactly. Yeah. Because if you think of someone like O'Leary or, others, we talk about it. It's the ideas. You'll know why we support a person if we're voting for them, if we voted for them. But it's all about the ideas, because even after we vote for them, well, if we disagree with what we're doing or what they're doing, then, of course, we're going to criticize them. And nobody cares. The celebrity thing is even, especially because it's always, if you think about it, it's almost always the left with few exceptions, with the exception of Tom Selleck and James Woods. It's this idea that, well, I'm going to endorse this person. It's hip and cool, or it makes me hip and cool to be associated with this person. How's that working for George Clooney?
Then there was this one, too, because we didn't even bring it up yesterday because don't view it as important. Well, maybe we did. Did we bring it up? Maybe I can't remember off the air. Trump buying and driving the Tesla.
I don't think we mentioned it on the air.
Okay, but this is Scott Jennings on it, also on CNN yesterday.
I'm assuming you agree, because as a Republican strategist, you wouldn't have advised him to go in front of the White House and drive a Tesla.
Wait, why?
Because
Of course I would have. You know why? Because if I were advising a Republican president, I would say, let's support American companies that have thousands of American workers and thousands more workers who make indirect products for it. Yeah, I think it would be a good idea if American companies did well under my administration.
But look, the thing, and we said this early on when he appointed Elon Musk to DOGE, you got to watch out for the appearance of any type of impropriety, conflict of interest, whatever. And but the fact is, if you want to promote Tesla, an American company, and buy a vehicle, that's fine. You may have some Republicans and conservatives saying, you're promoting electric vehicles here. You better not do that in legislation. And it's like, well, he got rid of the EV mandate, the executive order. And, Elon Musk's already said, I don't want any subsidies. He said that a long time before President Trump appointed him to DOGE. And so that's the only thing I care. If all of a sudden the president comes up and starts saying, I want to promote and bring back more subsidies that go to electric vehicles, you've got a problem at that point.
Yeah, because I looked at DOGE and appointing Elon Musk to DOGE more aligned with the Twitter files than anything that he did with Tesla or SpaceX or anything else. Because it really is, okay, we're going to expose all the waste and fraud in government spending. That's the entire idea. And after the Twitter files, I thought, well, that's a natural progression to have him in charge of exposing that. And the Tesla thing, most people are looking at that and they don't care one way or the other.
Yeah, they don't.
Doesn't
the American
move
public
the needle.
doesn't care. No,
doesn't move the needle at all.
Right.
To Scott Jennings' point, if you want to, you can use it as a photo op saying, hey, here's an American company, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I don't think that moves the needle much right now. What is going to move the needle in that regard is when you get all the tariff situation situated completely, and whether they're still in place or not in place or some are in place, but you do it and then move on. I think that's going to, have an actual impact. But presidents do this all the time. It's if that were Obama and Elon Musk never went to, if Michelle Obama
Biden drove
became
stuff.
became the president, but nobody thought Biden was cool when he did it.
But he was what?
That he was cool when he did it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
The left, this is where I was going. The left, is like, oh, look, he's so cool. He's so cool. I remember the one comedians in cars getting coffee. Jerry went to the White House, and Biden was, Obama was still in office. And they got in a car and drove around the White House grounds and, kind of made a joke that Secret Service wouldn't let him leave the grounds, but he was driving an old Mustang or something. I forget what it was. And it's kind of, Seinfeld isn't necessarily one of those comedians that cares about who's cool or not, but he had a chance to, interview a sitting president. You're probably going to do that for your show. The left, though, they adored everything at the time that he did. And if someone on the left does it, they're really cool. Don't forget, Beto rode a skateboard in a Whataburger parking lot, and the leftist media lost their mind, So it's not a needle mover. Doesn't make a difference.
866-90 Red Eye.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. It's not always easy to spring back from the harsh days of winter to warmer months ahead. From de-icing chemicals to hidden debris underneath snow and ice, winter conditions can do serious damage to your truck. Here's a must-do maintenance check to help you minimize downtime and stay rolling. Have your batteries tested and inspect your electrical system for any exposed connections, wires, or butt connectors. Get any exposed components repaired immediately, as the acidic nature of highway de-icers will erode any exposed connections or wires in no time at all.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up here on the show today, Schumer says no, that the Democrats will reject the continuing resolution. Rand Paul calls out the so-called fiscal conservatives in his own party who refuse to actually vote to actually cut spending in this particular bill. I noticed that rumbling starting within the Republican Party yesterday, and the questions being asked.
Right.
The same questions we have just in general on social media, which is, well, he said we've done already $4 billion in savings a day. How come that doesn't reflect at all in the continuing resolution or initially in what we have seen from the 10-year budget?
Right.
And so that question is like, well, we'd like to see it in there. If you've saved it and it hasn't, and nobody's been affected, nobody's lost benefits, why wouldn't you include it in order to excite your base?
Yeah.
I mean, the whole DOGE thing is you can make the case in doing it. Why isn't it in there? And also a lot of defense of Massey and people not happy that Trump said this is the kind of guy that we need to get out of the Republican Party because you're promising these massive cuts. He's the one saying, but you're not cutting here at all.
Right.
And as I said yesterday, both are right because you want this continuing resolution to go through, and only a $10 billion increase over that time doesn't even match inflation. So in essence, if you count inflation, you're cutting, but it's not the kind of promises you get from DOGE.
Right.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app, available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Republicans already have come up with Shutdown Schumer. You've seen that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And everybody got the exact same talking points.
Right.
From the Democrats, and they're posting it. You know, that's one thing that has been noticed lately is they actually don't change. They get the talking points, and it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
The exact same words, and they all put it out.
Yeah, verbatim.
Verbatim, yeah. It's just, and that was, last and all. What we're looking for is a 4-week extension that looks at all the priorities that are necessary in a bipartisan way. Mm-hmm. And this is where, again, Republicans Mike Johnson did what he needed to do, which was to politically get it through.
Right.
And now it's up to Trump and Johnson to sell it to the American people, because that's the point. You need to hang this on the Democrats and say the Democrats are the ones that wish to shut this down.
Right.
We have this bill. It's ready to go. Let's go. But you should what really hit from Republicans that weren't happy about it yesterday is the fact that this continues the funding for the Biden administration programs that they're attempting to cut. Not only does it not reflect any of the DOGE savings that Republicans want, but it continues everything that the Biden administration was funding that DOGE is wanting to get rid of.
Right. Yeah.
And here's this is Rand Paul on it yesterday. Here we go.
The bill we're going to have to face this week will be continuing spending at the same level. These are the levels that were determined in December between Democrats and Republicans. These are the Biden spending levels. We know one result that will come from these spending levels, a $2 trillion deficit. So these spending levels exceed revenue by $2 trillion. There's no escaping that. So there's nothing conservative about these spending levels. No fiscal conservative should support this because it's going to borrow $2 trillion. That was the principle which once upon a time united all fiscal conservatives. So I will oppose it. I will propose an amendment today, and I'm hoping to get a vote on it. This amendment will take some of the DOGE and Elon Musk cuts to foreign aid and incorporate them into the spending.
There you go.
Well, and that's something that we'd been asking. Why is it that you can't do that?
Well, the problem is you promoted, and it just came out, what 2-3 days ago?
Yeah.
Where he came out, we are currently saving. We have saved $4 billion a day, and you figure that out, that's $1.46 trillion.
Right.
Well, if you've saved that amount and nobody has lost a benefit,
right,
why wouldn't you start promoting it? Because saying it, this is what we've done, and having nobody in Congress, I mean, you do now, but before the bill was written, saying we have, you might have Massey, say it, and Rand Paul say it, but it wasn't really out there. There was no united front of Republicans stating, look, if we've got $1.46 trillion in savings, that's a year. Right. You and I said, if that's accurate from Elon Musk, and he has not backtracked on it, and the savings are there, and nobody is affected whatsoever, and then you put a continuing resolution out that doesn't mention it at all. We brought it up, and now you've got Rand Paul bringing it up. Massey's bringing it up. Others are saying, well, we have to get this through, and we need to politically get this through in order for the Democrats to reject this, and then we can go further next time, come October 1st, that we can start promoting what we actually wish to do. Right. The problem is Republicans have heard that for such a long time. But the real problem is, the challenge is Elon Musk and then all the Republicans saying, look how much we're saving you every day right now. Well, if the budget's the same, you're not saving us anything, is a response to it. You may have a legitimate argument that we can't do it right now. We have to move it down. But the twofer is there are no savings from DOGE, and you're funding what the Biden administration wanted, and a lot of the programs that DOGE is cutting. Politically, that is a tough road to climb right now.
It makes it look like you're not walking the walk.
Yeah.
Because what was the idea when DOGE first came about? What was the concern by fiscal conservatives? Yeah, okay, but we got to get everybody on Capitol Hill on board with it. All right. Committees and the Senate and the House. All right, there's going to be then not just one liaison, but you're going to have it set up where, all right, this is going to be very fluid. Basically, you can point out the savings, point out the fraud or whatever's going on, and where we need to cut, and pass that on to Capitol Hill. You get your first chance at that, and you don't move on it.
And the other challenge is it's not Democrats that are coming after you to cut. Who was it that we played yesterday? The Republicans saying, looking at Democrats saying, you're talking about that we need to have more cuts, that spending's too great. I look forward to seeing your proposal.
Chip Roy, wasn't it?
Well, it was Chip Roy. Yeah, it was Chip Roy saying it. I look for, but that's one of the problems is it's not Democrats. They're going to be coming after you and saying, where are the cuts? Because they really don't want the cuts.
Right.
And Chip Roy made that clear.
Right.
You guys talking about cuts, you're not going to have a cut in there.
Right.
You know it. We know it. We all know it.
Right.
So that the pressure isn't coming there. The pressure is coming from conservative Republicans that are saying, wait a minute. We can't, you can't do this. Mm-hmm. You can't on one hand saying, look at this. We're just cutting like crazy and nobody's getting harmed by it. What's in the continuing resolution that sort of mirrors that in any way or shows us that there's even an inkling that we can start cutting 0.000001%. What they're saying is, well, since we're only increasing at $10 billion, it's actually a cut because that doesn't keep up with inflation.
We've heard that before. Technically you can make that point, but that doesn't include, you're not working in the spirit of what DOGE was supposed to be all about.
Exactly. And so that's the challenge. That's a challenge that, Republicans have. But I understand. And Chip Roy said it the other day, and it is true. The fact that they got a continuing resolution that only increases it $10 billion.
Right.
But the interesting thing is that even, Tim Burchett said it yesterday, and it's like, guys, don't talk like that. You're saying there are real cuts here. There are real cuts. Well, yeah, there are real cuts, and there's increase in spending.
Yeah.
So overall, don't tell me there's real cuts. I guess it's like your significant other with a credit card.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's it. It's like I said yesterday,
and saying,
honey, I'm going to buy this one-off Corvette or sports car. I was going to buy it. It's $500,000. I decided to buy a Camry. So I saved you $450,000.
Or the fact is you can't even afford your minimum payments,
mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, look, this month, honey, I increased my spending on the credit card by $200, but that doesn't even keep up with the rate of inflation.
Right.
Your significant other, and I did not accuse it of being a female doing this. It could be a male. Again, buying fishing equipment.
Could be.
Let me stereotype there. Males
or guitars.
Or guitars, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. What would it be for me? Cats. No, I'm not kidding.
Buy something else my truck doesn't need but looks cool.
Buy a toy for me.
I've done that
Oh,
before.
no, I have it for me. Golf clubs.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
So these are all the challenges, but they're challenges that were created by your own party. That's the challenge.
Well, that's going to be it. I mean, the focus is going to be, honestly, the real debate is within the Republican Party.
Yeah, the debate is not Democrats because
we know where they're we know exactly where they stand.
Right.
That's not going to change. It was always going to be that Chuck was going to turn it down. By the way, on a side note, I've seen something on YouTube that I can't unsee. Lindsey Buckingham, the former guitarist for Fleetwood Mac, great guitarist, great artist, but he's slowly turning into Chuck Schumer. I'm not wrong. Go to his YouTube page. and look at his videos, and he answers questions from readers, and it's really nice. And I'm sure he's a great guy. I love his work. I love his work as a guitarist. It's great. But holy cow, he is slowly turning into Chuck Schumer. And I'm not wrong about that.
Eric did not give me a heads up on this.
No.
So he's making me.
I've seen it like several of the latest videos, and it's like, oh, man, are they related? Could they be related? Because he's just, if he puts on the readers at the end of his nose and looks down over the readers, oh, my gosh. Yeah.
Yeah, I just did a scan. I can't find anything that's recent.
All right. Yeah, I'll find something. It's and I can't unsee it. So, yeah, well, there's that. But everyone knew. Everyone knew.
That came out of left field. It
Only
really
we
did.
could bring Lindsey Buckingham into the
I was
equation
wondering,
here.
I will tell you this. Eric did not tell me about this. I'm wondering, what the hell kind of tangent is Eric going off into?
It's just, and maybe it's just my little brain. I don't know, but I don't think I'm the only one. Once I pointed out, others might agree with me. But the thing is that, and this is why I'm really anxious now about getting to reconciliation. Because if the idea is, hey, get us the votes, and we'll kick it over to the Democrats, and we know what they'll do. And we can put the shutdown on them. If they want to own the shutdown, they have the power to keep the shutdown from, that whole thing. Okay, great. But eventually you get to reconciliation because you're telling those conservative GOPers, you fight for what you want in reconciliation. Well, what does that look like? The margin in the House isn't going to change. The number of seats the GOP has is not going to change between now and then. So I don't know what that looks like. And what can be done, what can get done during reconciliation. If that's the true battle, what does that true battle look like if we're not even approaching anything from DOGE at this point? It's because I would expect Massey, Chip Roy, and others, then if that's the case, all right, we did what you asked on the CR, but now we're here at reconciliation. Now we're going to go for the gold. We're going to go for everything we want. Well, okay, what's the response going to be?
Yeah, and then you're going to face it again in October.
Exactly.
So you got 2 times you're going to face it in reconciliation and then one of the things yesterday when you saw, by the way, I was glad the inflation numbers went down a little bit. That was good to 2.8%, and the core down. That's all good news.
Yeah.
The bad news, which I think tempered it, you had tempered the stock market yesterday was Canada now because, it's like, okay, you put the 25% tariffs on, we're responding. The White House was pretty quiet to that, but Canada's just making the case, well, that this is just retaliatory because the U.S. did this to us, so we're doing it back. It wasn't the electricity thing, but really it was we already hit $1 trillion in debt. We're not halfway through the fiscal year.
Right.
So we're going to have at least $2 trillion.
Yeah.
Again this year. And again, what is the, what's going to happen then? What are they going to do October 1st? Can the Republican Party itself do nothing in reconciliation and then nothing now, nothing in reconciliation and nothing on October 1st and not implode from the inside? Because the DOGE, they're going to be talking even more if we're saving $1.46 trillion and then they start saying we've saved $2 trillion and there's no cuts by October. There will be a war inside you're not going to be able to get anything to the House.
Right.
The conservatives at that point will say, no, we're not going to do it.
Right.
You're claiming all these savings and not only claiming the savings, but you're claiming nobody is being denied any benefit.
Right.
So we could actually cut here and the American public isn't going to politically hold it against us and you're doing nothing. So on one hand, you can't promote this and then do nothing over here.
Right.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up, more analysis of of a possible shutdown coming on Friday. The whole concept of trade deficits. Great article written on it, and it's something we've talked about it before, but we haven't talked about it right now when it comes to when you have a trade surplus or a trade deficit. What actually happens to that money?
Right.
Because yesterday I was trying again to figure out, exactly what Trump thinks on economics, and I always have a hard time. I can't figure it out. I don't know, what his base thought is of how economics works. But on trade deficit, we'll get to that. And when a liberal seems to be trying to be stupid.
Top of the hour news is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning.
Hello.
All right, so reading the Babylon Bee headlines here.
All right.
Liberals defeat Nazis by painting swastikas everywhere and torching immigrant businesses worldwide. God. Checkmate. Trump hits Canada with tariff of double infinity plus one. Wow. Final one. Ireland capsizes after the arrival of Rosie O'Donnell. Oh, my gosh. Oh.
Trying to plan ahead, if Kamala runs in 28 and wins, I know it's a unicorn, but bear with me. I'm thinking about moving to Scotland.
If who wins?
If Kamala runs again and wins.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
I'll move to Scotland.
Okay. I just didn't hear the at the end.
I can't imagine that mindset. Well, I'm leaving. You're such a child.
Yeah, I know.
You're not going to get me to leave. I don't care who the president is.
Yes, we've talked about it. I mean, it's gutless. Stand and fight. Nobody is forcing me out of the country.
Right.
I'm an American. I'm going to stay an American, and nobody is going to make me leave, no matter what.
Right
now, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. I don't care what the consequences are. I'm not leaving the United States.
No.
You know why? Not because I'm a patriot above all patriots. It's about the fact that so many people have sacrificed everything, so I have had the opportunities that I have.
Yeah.
I owe those people.
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, I always think of this in terms of my behavior. I have to call my dad. I have to have that conversation with Dad. And imagine me saying something so stupid, like number one, like I thought anybody would care or it matters that I'd be moving, because someone that I didn't vote for won. And, at number two, exactly what you just said would come back at me from my dad. Said, well, what is it you think I did? What is it? What do you think my job was? What do you think? And he would point out not just me, all the countless others and those who didn't come home. What do you think this is about?
Yeah.
Which is, of course, would be in my mind to begin with. I'm not, it is this it really is this virtue signaling to the nth degree. You're really a coward if you have to run.
Yeah.
If you don't want to stay and fight for what you believe in. Because my thought would be, I mean, if I were to issue a serious response, as if I cared, to Rosie O'Donnell or anybody who is a so-called celebrity, because she said something to the effect, I'll move back when everyone has equal rights. All right. Fine. Let's
break that down.
Well, let me just ask you this. You're announcing this to the world, and apparently it happened a while back. She had to tell everybody. She had to go out of her, hey, everybody, I know you didn't notice, but I moved. But you're announcing it because clearly you believe it will have an impact. If you believe that what you do has an impact because of your status as a celebrity or whatever, why wouldn't you use that to stay and fight for others? You're a coward.
What I find interesting is that mindset would never enter my mind.
Right.
It's time to leave.
Right.
No, it's time to fight for what I believe in.
Yeah.
And it's time to fight for the Constitution of the United States. Why? As I said, not because I'm virtue signaling when I say this, that I'm more of a patriot than you are. It simply comes back to I owe the people that came before me that sacrificed everything because they had the intent to make my life better, and I owe that to future generations of American citizens. It's that simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a thing. Not that everybody knows I love the Constitution of the United States and everything else, but the fact is, you cannot forget the people. If you truly feel that the Constitution of the United States, now she can't explain it because when she talks about rights, I guarantee she cannot articulate what she's talking about.
No.
Because nobody has lost any constitutional rights in the United States.
No.
That hasn't happened. And so she can't make the argument for it. But if I could make the argument that my constitutional rights are being infringed, it would never even enter my mind to go somewhere else. I'm going to fight for it. And again, it's not virtue signaling. It's that the realization that I have the gift, and I've had the gift my entire life of freedom and opportunity that was fought for by others, and I owe it not to run when things get tough because I owe it to future generations to ensure that they have the same opportunity and freedoms that I've experienced in my life.
Well, the idea is to stand for what you believe in, not run away from what you don't.
Yeah.
The entire idea from the beginning, if you look at the Declaration of Independence, from the beginning, this means war. This means fighting, literally. And for those of us who have, I'd say, a much more convenient lifestyle in 2025 and the abilities and everything, and we live like kings even and queens, even if we're not celebrities or wealthy by whatever standard, we have available to us information and the ability to stand up. And you either choose to do that or you don't. But when you're virtue signaling, saying, I'm leaving and I'll come back when everyone has equal rights, you're just being a coward, and there's no two ways around it.
I think I brought it up in the air. I don't know if it was the summer of 2020 or what it was. You know, when you could feel, you know, you were at, you know, by that point, and you get past, you know, 2020 and 2021, and the censoring and everything that we saw, and the attack on conservative media, the attempt to censor media. I had somebody who's a local talk show host ask me the question. They said, "You feel intimidated? You feel scared about anything?" I go, "No, absolutely not." Have you restrained yourself at all? I go, absolutely not. There's nothing I say that's radical.
No.
Now, it is to the left, but everything that I believe mirrors the Constitution of the United States, everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm like the postman.
In the movie The Postman.
Yes, the movie. Yes, not Cliff Clavin.
Not a lot of people know that.
Yes, the postman.
Yeah.
You're going to lose because you don't believe in anything. And Kevin Costner, I believe, as he's being choked, I believe in the United States of America. And I do.
Oh, and like...
because we're perfect and never make mistakes.
And
Just to throw that one out there so somebody responds, oh, you think the United States is perfect? Yes, we never make mistakes ever because we are the most perfect humans ever that been created. So I guess I diffused that argument coming back at me, right?
and also I'll quote another great movie, Harrison Ford as president. Get off my plane.
So you mean Clint Eastwood?
No,
stole that?
Yeah, no. Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn.
Get off my lawn. I'm just going to quote movies all night, but it is. I can't imagine feeling that way, but I certainly recognize how and why the left comes to those conclusions, because they want a life where they're going to be adored. Everybody's going to be adored, and only their side is going to win. And only their side can talk. And on top of that, even further now these days, you better talk like their side talks, otherwise we're coming after you. You know, that's where we are, and America said no to that in November of last year.
Well, if you look at it as an individual, I go about my day doing the same things that I did, well, maybe not the same things, but with the same attitude that I did 30 years ago or 40 years ago. Still doing the same thing. Nobody on the left's personal life has been changed.
No.
They haven't lost. There's no rights constitutional rights that they have lost. She can't make that argument, which is why she just leaves. Because she can't even articulate, and this is on the left, this is the uncontrollable rage that they don't even understand and can't articulate what the rage is about, except we're not getting our way and our team isn't in. Well, what did your team do? You know, we know the government attempted to censor American citizens and major media, and you went along with that.
Right.
You want the denial of First Amendment rights. I can point them out to you. And, Rosie, you were in favor of that. So don't give me this virtue signaling crap that you somehow are a higher defender of the Constitution. You know why? You can't make the argument yourself. Otherwise, you'd be on media making and articulating the argument, and you're not. You're a coward who left the United States.
Right.
Because you don't have the guts to stand up for what you believe, because I don't know if you even know what you believe, except our side isn't in power and isn't in control, and therefore I'm taking my ball and going to Ireland.
Right.
I was going with the Irish Prime Minister, Trump. Do you know what you're getting?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Did you actually understand what you're getting here?
You understand here, yeah.
Have you thought about do you really want her?
Right.
I like those.
Put it to a vote.
If she's coming back, a Rosie tariff. I go, well, that's a tariff I can get behind.
Oh, yeah, all day. 1,000% tariff. It's
that's a little low.
I was going to say, that's kind of going easy,
I like
isn't
the
it?
double infinity plus one.
Babylon B. Yeah. Plus one. I love it.
All right, 866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
The IFTA tax program redistributes tax revenue to states based on your actual miles run. Thus, the truly cheapest fuel can only be found if you subtract federal and state taxes and state surcharges from the pump price to compare. The strategy means that you buy without regard for whether you are paying more at the pump in taxes. IFTA also considers state surcharges, which complicates the fuel buying strategy. Indiana, Kentucky, and Virginia have per gallon surcharges. Connecticut, Kentucky, New Mexico, New York, and Oregon have per mile surcharges. While some owner-operators buy only enough fuel to get through surcharge states, this practice can backfire, depending on the actual cost of the fuel in each state. When comparing fuel prices, always remember, pump pride minus taxes equals the real fuel cost. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more detail on this and many other topics.
Brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Shutdown Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. And we're going to stay. We're not leaving the country. Okay,
We're not leaving the country.
Right.
We're already worldwide, thanks to our app, our newly updated app.
Yes, our newly updated app.
Yes, that's free.
You know, I was thinking it was 5 years ago this week when everything started shutting down for COVID.
Yeah, wow.
5 years ago this week. 5 years ago that you and I, because I just had to be the 10th or the 11th. Probably the 11th, because that's when the shutdown actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
When I woke up to this email and then text from you going, what? It's like we're getting this from management saying, nobody is doing their radio show from the studios. You must do it from home. You'll be doing it tonight from home. Here's how to do it. It's like, what are you talking about? We got nothing set up.
Right.
It's like we have to come in.
Right. Yeah, we really didn't have a choice. We weren't equipped to
we weren't equipped.
broadcast
It was just like, does anybody know what's going on here? Because we're not equipped at home to do it. And then we just said, no, we're not going to do it from home. I think we might have been the only show in the entire company that came in every day.
I think that might be the case.
Because I know even the local stations, they had to do it from home.
Mm-hmm.
And we just said no, it's not, we didn't know it was, nobody knew where it was going to lead. We now know. I saw somebody write an article, I'll get to it, saying, it just, when you think about it, what we went through, it's completely unacceptable. And it still gets me angry.
Mm-hmm.
It was April 2nd coming up here will be 5 years that my mom died.
Mm.
I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to New York for her funeral.
Yeah.
There was no reason. We now know why I could not have gone back.
Right.
We know that. So many other people went through that also. When you think about it. And remember, I couldn't get back to New York for 13 months.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because when my mom got sick in March is when I wanted to go back. I couldn't go back. And then remember what they put on, the quarantine and everything, and you had to prove that you were vaccinated, that the quarantine was like a certain number of days. But in the first year before they had it, you had to quarantine yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And even after the vax came out, which would have been starting in January of 2021, you still couldn't come in. You still had to quarantine yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to go there, basically quarantine for 3 days, somehow get a test, wait till the test result came in, and then you could go out into public, which was 4 or 5 days. I couldn't do that.
Right. It was insane.
It was, you think about it, absolutely insane what we went through.
Yeah.
Just
yeah, it really was.
Crazy. That can never happen again. It cannot happen again, what happened back then. It was horrible.
Yeah, it was, over the top. And the more there was pushback on it, the more the left came around and used every bit of authority they had to shut people down.
Yeah.
I mean, mind-boggling how bad that was.
And I would say 90 to 95% of everything that was done and we were told was a lie.
Right? Yeah.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Download our new Red Eye Radio app today if you already have it. You've been updated automatically, and if you haven't, go check it out and update if you want. But everything I have is updated on my Android.
Yeah, if you set your phone to automatically update the apps, then it should have happened by now. If not, go ahead and update that so you have the new app. It's I'll tell you, it's worth the price. It's free.
It is worth the price.
Every penny. No, it's great. The IT team did such a great job. They did a really great job. Looks great. And so make sure you have it. And if you don't have the app yet, what are you doing? What's wrong with you?
So yeah,
come on.
So 5 years ago this week, the COVID stuff hit. You think of everything that we went through. I mean, I remember coming in, and remember we got the letter.
Yeah.
People forget that in the beginning, even in Texas, we had to have a letter that showed, okay, this is the time the guys go to work and come home. We forget about that. Remember when you were only supposed to be on the road to go to work or the grocery store? Remember that?
Yeah, I mean, nobody enforced it, but that's what they were trying to enforce. That's what they were trying to implement.
That was the goal on police.
Yeah.
No, we're not going to be.
Yeah, we're not spending resources on this. Because all you have to do is say, no, I'm headed to the store. There's no way to prove or disprove it. There's no way to enforce it.
Remember Karens and Lances? Okay, I had to throw Lance in there. I don't know. What's a male Karen? A Lance? No.
A Kevin?
A Kevin? Not Kevin. No. Remember the people screaming? They'd be jogging. They'd be jogging on a jogging path or a bicycle path, and somebody would either be jogging without a mask on or bicycling without a mask on, and what are you doing? We're like, you're out in the middle of the air. There's wind blowing. Shut up.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you couldn't do anything. It went from, how dare you wear a mask? We're saving those for all of the first responders.
Yeah.
And then it was, in that almost the same sentence, it changed that quickly. How dare you not wear a mask? Are you trying to kill everybody? I mean, that's where we were. And the masks were useless. Seriously. It was just horrible. One of my favorite stand-up comedians, Dusty Slay, on his Netflix special, Working Man, does a bit about the N95 mask. And he goes, man, you ever burp inside one of those? I don't know if they keep things out, but they will keep things in.
Oh.
It's one of the funniest bits. And I think of the times you still see people wearing masks. And I don't know how much of that is virtue signaling. It's probably you'd have to go from individual to individual, or how much of that is, people with actually compromised immune systems, and they're doing anything and everything to prevent whatever. I don't know. I can't tell you. You'd have to talk person to person. But the mandates were insane. We immediately as a public knew, well, the elderly are going to be affected by this at a greater rate, like with every virus. That's the case. So I know with my parents, if anybody is coughing and sneezing, you don't go visit them.
Yeah.
That's been the case for, a number of years as they got older and older. That was just the case. That, so we knew how to handle this. We know how to assess our own risks. But then you have to go in and everything that we suspected and all of the things that we suspected that came true, that were actually the case at the time, and we learned later, we got confirmation later. Tell me what the risk is of teaching children, if you breathe on someone, you could kill them. If they breathe on you, you could die. Tell me what the risk is of sending them home to learn. By the way, it's the risk for the teachers' unions, because a lot was learned about what was going on in the classroom and what kids were being taught as homeschooling actually became the thing. But you're sending so many mixed signals to kids and adolescents. And you're not telling them, the left was not telling them everything's going to be okay, we're going to get through this. It was, again, if you talk to somebody without a mask, then one of you or both of you could get very sick or die.
And I still I haven't looked at the numbers 5 years out, but I still believe they're the same. That for young, healthy children, it was less lethal than the flu.
Right.
I believe that still holds up for kids.
Right.
And so what we did to the children was unconscionable.
Yeah.
It really, really, what we did there by closing schools and what we did, and you couldn't stop it, as we know, as whether, I don't know a medical professional that doesn't believe that everyone was going to come into contact with the COVID virus. Everyone.
Yeah. Right.
You couldn't stop it no matter what you did. Everyone was going to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And what they should have done is protect old people.
Right.
Old people, vulnerable people, people with, as we all know, underlying conditions.
Mm-hmm.
But they didn't do that. And when you think about it, some of the stuff, just on YouTube, you can go back and look at it. The guy out, the one I always loved was the guy out surfing alone in California who was arrested.
Mm-hmm.
They went out and got him because he was surfing. He was out on the beach. Remember that? The beach stuff? You couldn't go on the beach.
Tom Brady couldn't go exercise in the park.
Yeah. Well, remember that one. Well, I remember that here. You can't.
Right.
You couldn't go to the park here.
Right.
And then they said, okay, you can go, but it must be the immediate household and not more than 4 people outside.
Right. No, there were parks here that had the social distancing markers and little messages on the sidewalks. That's how stupid that whole thing got.
I didn't fly for 13 months, so this had to be sometime in 2021 when the airlines, remember, because it was even a year and a half after. When was it when the airlines dropped the mask mandates? because I remember I had a mask. You know, you had to wear them.
It was fairly
was
late in the
basic-
game when they dropped it.
But I had the masks. I found a mask that had the air vent because if it just, for me, I don't know what it is. My lungs are really, really strong. They've always been strong. I had a hard time breathing with the mask on. You could feel the resistance.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got one of the masks. Remember they had the mask with the little air vents?
Mm-hmm.
The filtered air vents?
Right. Those were a thing for a minute, and then all of a sudden, no.
Yeah. I wore one because this had to be when I started flying again, so it had to be after April 2nd, which is when they stopped the quarantine in New York, April 2nd, 2021. I don't know if it might have been over the summer, whatever. But when those come out, thank goodness I can breathe with this and, you know, whatever. It didn't matter whether you had the air vent or didn't have the air vent. They were useless.
Right.
We know now.
Yeah.
I got on the plane. I got screamed at. Sir, what are you doing? You can't enter the plane with that mask. What do you mean? Do they change it now? I'm not supposed to wear a mask? We're saving it for surgery? No, you've got an air vent. Oh. And they get
because with the other masks, no air gets out.
Right. I got yelled at.
Mm-hmm.
And they gave me a mask that was more flimsy.
No, that's what I mean.
The paper mask.
Yeah.
Than the one that I was actually wearing.
Because nothing gets through that little flimsy mask.
Yeah. And you're shaking your head going, what the hell?
Yeah. No, it was so backwards. You know, and the governor, I'm sorry, your kids are playing across the street with other children? These very low-risk individuals are playing together like multiple?
And you and I kept saying, we said, well, wait a minute. We know how viruses are spread. And all viruses are spread the same way.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody was saying that this was a virus that was spread differently. You know,
right.
It's either contact or through the air or whatever. And we said, well, by mandating that everybody stay in the house, but some people are still going to work, aren't you increasing the odds of spreading it inside? If you let people out and they're outside 5 hours a day, aren't they less likely to get, because if you were worried about, because then it became, well, we're not worried. We know everybody's going to catch the virus. We don't all want them to catch it at once. So hospital beds are available.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then you should want people outside. If they're outside, they're much less likely to get the virus. If you're putting them in the house, boy, this is deja vu, isn't it?
Well, we started
this is
right
deja vu
away.
talking about
no,
this.
It really is. Because when we started, immediately, I brought up the idea of shared air. Well, what do you think is going to happen?
Yeah.
It's not like let's say 4 people living in a home. Multiple people, especially the adults there, are going to have to leave and come back. They're going to have to go get things. And you're going to bring whatever from the outside, and then everybody's going to have shared air inside that house. But the idea was don't go outside. What?
And then
that's so backwards.
Then remember when we got to like 4th of July, Independence Day, Memorial Day, and then we got to Thanksgiving.
Oh, if you had multiple people and then
even Christmas,
the virtue signaling, I'm not having any governors or mayors. I will not be having anyone at my home for Thanksgiving, and I'm okay with that.
Remember some cities sending cops to people's homes because there were a few cars outside and somebody, blew them in.
We'll come after you.
Somebody snitched and said, I think they're having a party. Party!
Right. Multiple people under one roof. We'll have it on the patio. Well, wait a minute. A minute ago, we couldn't go outside.
Yeah. And then we got to the Great Barrington Declaration.
Oh.
Where Dr., Bhattacharya, who's now the head of NIH, remember these doctors come and go, we're doing it all wrong. And they censored them. Fauci tried to destroy their life. The government went after them and everything else. And they were right.
Mm-hmm.
They were absolutely right, and this government tried to shut down the truth.
Yep.
Just amazing.
I think back at all those moments and all of these activists that were in power at that time, locally, You had, and then the governor of California. You can't do this. You can't do this, and then all of a sudden, no masks at a dinner party.
Yeah,
with friends, including doctors, and they're all sharing wine, laughing. I mean, it was, and we said, forget about, them being hypocrites. They don't buy the science. They don't believe it.
Yeah, that's what we always said. They don't buy it.
Right.
They want you to buy it, but they don't.
They don't.
Remember the basketball game?
Oh, my gosh.
Remember when everybody was there? Who was somebody standing next to what's?
Oh, it was, I think it was a football game. And Magic
game?
Johnson and Governor Newsom standing there with Magic Johnson.
Right. Who has an underlying condition.
With no mask
HIV.
on.
Yeah.
He doesn't buy the science.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Coming up, an analysis of trade. What happens if you have a trade deficit? What actually happens? That's a lot of talk about tariffs and everything else. If you have a trade deficit, it's bad. But what happens? Why is it bad? We'll get into that. Why is it bad or why is it not bad? We'll get to that. Plus, we heard from Rand Paul, who said he's not going to vote for the continuing resolution.
Right.
Well, that makes it further that if Democrats are going to vote for it, you'd need another Democrat.
Right.
And he just said, sorry, it doesn't do anything that DOGE is promising. We'll hear the other side of that argument coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America and around the world, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Thank you for being here. I also think about the whole COVID thing, and, the one thing that's still a little bit lost in this, because Democrats don't care, Republicans do, is that Biden tried to hide it. His entire administration tried to hide, did everything they could to hide the fact that China, in all likelihood, created the COVID virus. And the United States was involved in it through gain-of-function research. They did everything to try to stop that narrative. They did everything to protect China. They did everything to try to not inform the citizens of the United States why this happened.
Yeah.
And Democrats were okay with that. Not one Democrat do I ever remember ever complaining and saying, we need to know how this happened. We need to know.
Nobody on the left was screaming, we have to get to the bottom of this. Nobody.
Never. And I was just reading here Jeffrey Blair's comment in National Review. I can only look back in anger.
Yeah.
5 years later, the architects of the COVID era's lockdown insanity deserve only our contempt. It's true.
Yeah.
He said, one of the reasons I haven't written lately about COVID, I cannot summon memories of that era without becoming furious at what I suffered through, without reliving the sense of utter betrayal from all authority we experienced during that period. I have never felt so despairingly abandoned and, in fact, actively oppressed by every level of government than in those dark years. For some people, say the lucky ones enough to live in Florida, this matter was largely one of political principle. For me, it was deeply personal. Now, we did for a couple of months it was locked. We were pretty well locked down, but then that ended here in Texas too.
Mm-hmm.
We
Right.
moved on quicker than a lot of other states.
Mm-hmm.
Understand that I live in Chicago. Moving is not an option. How the hell could you move during the pandemic?
Right. Yeah.
Life here during the pandemic years and the closely related Floyd riots, which unmoored my city into a free-floating existential despair it is yet to recover from, left deep psychological scars on me and my family alike. Most of the time, my wife and I treat it as a dark black cloud of madness and sorrow whose details we no longer wish to remember. It's in the distant past now. It's over. I don't want to talk about it. I don't need to talk about it. But I must talk about it at least once, if only to exercise it. I have a son. He has special needs, a genetic disorder so rare there are only 25 clinically documented cases, and in particular, he suffers from severe speech delays and articulation issues. When the lockdown went into effect back in March of 2020, he was 1 year and 3/4 old. Our awareness of the magnitude of his challenge was only just dawning upon us at that point, and my wife and I made a sober calculation that since he would not be entering preschool till at least the fall of 2021, we could probably tough it out until then. And he has in quotes, until then. What we hadn't counted on was the progressive-driven COVID insanity actively interfering with our son's development to the point where it felt like the entire city was perversely conspiring against us and all other parents who live here. My boy was enrolled in a slate of therapy services at the time, physical speech, and others, and I cannot properly articulate the agony I felt as a father at the way therapy providers here inevitably followed official city state government policy as best practice. I want you to imagine the value of speech therapy given while wearing a mask to a child who desperately needs to be able to see lips move in order to learn his articulate sounds. I want you to ponder the quality of remote physical therapy for a child who cannot yet walk. I ask you to do these things because it hurts too much for me to dwell upon them any longer. Wow. I want you to imagine a city with all of its public parks bolted or zip-tied shut for over a calendar year. My memory is that the spring and summer of 2020 were unusually gorgeous and temperate. That memory has tinged with fury because my son never got to appreciate it. Only then just beginning to walk and suddenly desperate to run around and experience the world, his near horizons were arbitrarily limited to the world of our own apartment. We did not have a car yet. The best we could do was to take him to an open field and let him toddle around. The joylessness of those experiences with 2 beautiful parks that he loved, complete with slides, swings, and jungle gyms, bolted shut right nearby, has remained with me forever since. And he goes on to talk about it more. But you can understand the fury that he has at that point, especially when you're talking about his kids, his child, who had a lot of physical problems. For me, I have felt the anger for so many people who could not be there with loved ones when they were sick and when they died. They couldn't get together. They couldn't mourn. They couldn't grieve. I was blessed because, and I still remember. So I still get emotional, when I talk about my mom, and when she died on April 2nd of 2020. But I get emotional because I can still remember the first thing I wrote to all of our listeners when I came back and saw all the response, which was, remember at that point, what the liberals would always say, don't say thoughts and prayers, it doesn't matter. When you say, you're in my thoughts and prayers. And to me, it was the thing that got me through that.
Yeah.
That got me through that, not being able to go. I had to watch my mom's funeral online.
Yeah.
They only had in New York. They only had in a lot in New York, the immediate family to have visitation. So it was my brothers and sisters and my father. and I had to look at my mom in the casket, through my sister's cell phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they live streamed the church service where nobody was really allowed in it, and then to the cemetery, again, on my sister's phone. And my siblings did everything they could to make me feel included in it. It was a weird experience. And I think I talked about it on the air. All my friends know about it, but I remember the night before my mom's funeral. And, the COVID thing hit. You couldn't go anywhere. You couldn't do anything. I was out of work for a couple of days, but I remember it was a Sunday night and the funeral was a Monday. And I remember going to my closet and getting out my suit and everything else. I said, what are you doing? What are you doing? You're going to be watching it on, nobody's going to see you. You're going to be watching it. And I said, don't think about it. Just do it. If you feel it's the right thing to do, just do it. And so I did. I actually put on a suit and tie to watch my mom's, funeral. And I said, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with it later. For me, the full impact of my mother's death didn't come for a year and a half later. It would have, and that's when I was at my dad's house for Thanksgiving and helped to make the mashed potatoes, which has become a tradition. Don't know whether we're going to be able to do it again. I don't know if my father has the ability to even, be around to do that anymore. But I remember when I was helping him with the mashed potatoes, which was what my mom did. And I remember going to sleep that night. It would have been the night before Thanksgiving. And I remember not being able to sleep. It was like the horror of it. The finality hit a year and a half later. And it was my father that really, hit that in me doing that at Thanksgiving. But for me, I was actually lucky. I was able to get through it because my mother, no gray area with my mom at all. None. It was right, wrong, which means, I hated her as a teenager.
Yeah, sure.
But then I didn't hate her. I mean, I disliked her. I don't want to make it sound like I hated her. And with my mother and father, as I've said before, not that I ever rejected them in any way. I just didn't talk to them. And I had this conversation with a friend yesterday who said, I never had a relationship with my parents like you did. What brought my parents and I together, got us real close, was talk radio. My mother actually thought I was a lot more. I was in rock radio and, rock radio, club DJ, stand-up comedian. She thought I might have no morals at all. That I was just out there, doing what, taking advantage of every woman, you name it. My mom thought that's what I was doing in my 20s and even into my 30s. And so when they heard me on talk radio, they pulled me aside one day and said, do you really believe all that stuff you're saying on the radio? And I'm like, oh, I'm dead now. What are they talking about? I said, yes. They went, our son. And believe it or not, that helped bring my parents closer to me and me closer to my parents. And the relationship I've had is great. And so I know what my mom would have said. My mom would have said, suck it up. You can't come back. Don't worry about it. And so for me, that actually helped knowing what my mom would say and having no doubt that's what my mother would have said. And so it was April 1st, the year later, where they lifted the quarantine to go into New York. I went back April 2nd, flew in, met my sister and my dad at my dad's house, drove right to the cemetery, and other relatives knew I was coming in, and my other siblings showed up. My brother-in-law showed up. My couple of my nephews showed up, and they had the funeral for me, at the cemetery, which was a very joyous experience. Exactly a year later to the time my mom died. But it still shouldn't have happened. I shouldn't have had to go through that. My family shouldn't have had to go through that. I actually feel sadder from my family because I know they wanted me there, and I know my dad wanted me there.
Yeah, sure.
He wanted me there. They all deal with it because we've always done it, and there's no permanent scars, except I look at it, and I get more angry at other people when I hear their stories of what they went through and how devastated they were, that there were so many things that they couldn't do, which are so critically important in life. Grieving for your parents, your children, whatever they gone through, whatever they go through. It was just reprehensible, and there was no reason for it, and they knew it.
Yeah,
they had the information.
They didn't buy the science.
They didn't buy the science. They had the information,
we know that
and they didn't
based
tell
on
us.
how they behaved.
Yeah.
During that time, a longtime friend from childhood passed away. Same situation. His wife and his 2 children could be inside the church there in San Antonio, but nobody else. All of us guys who knew him since grade school got online, and the church made it available so that one of the guys actually embedded the service in a Zoom call. So we all got on Zoom, including our friend Raul Ortiz, who at that time was deputy border U.S. Chief of the Border Patrol. And we were all observing. We all kind of, before it started, had some moments, some observations about David's life. But what we saw later, and we couldn't see it then, was that members of his church and his community lined the streets. So as the funeral procession, which was, of course, only a couple of cars long, went through town and out to the burial site, people had lined the streets. It was reported locally that it was close to 2 miles long for him. And I think of his wife, Kathy, that would have gotten the support of a community at a time she needed. It was an unexpected death, and she should have had that support. And I know she felt the love of the people that were lining the streets, and that I'm sure they reached out to her. But there was no reason for her to not get that support. His 2 children, the same thing. That's what happens in a time of grieving. People come together, and it means a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm sure that she felt that, and the children felt that in the days after, but there was no reason to keep them outside that service. And it just, even if you were going to limit it to a small number, I mean, it would be limited because of the size of the church ultimately, but you couldn't justify anything that they were doing. They couldn't justify anything they were doing, especially after people like Gavin Newsom were seen out and about, not even wearing a mask. They didn't buy the science, and we knew that. But too many people couldn't grieve the way they should have grieved, couldn't go to the doctor, couldn't exercise outside the way they should have because of the insanity that was the governing of COVID.
Yeah. We can never allow that to happen again.
Ever.
86690 Red Eye.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, DOGE and the spending bill, and will the Democrats shut down the government on Friday? Shut down the government.
That's it.
Partially shut down the government. A tiny bit shut down the government.
Government's closed. Bear up front should have told you.
I say that because I remember the last shutdown. It's like, anybody feel anything?
Right. It's like, thought everything was closed. People aren't showing up for work. Hey, you don't work for the government. Yeah, but it's closed, right? The nation is closed, right? The whole nation's shut down. That's what I heard.
So we'll get to that and the latest on the tariff wars. I just looked all the stock market futures down again.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was a mixed day because there were so many things that came out. The inflation numbers came out.
Right.
Canada added more tariffs. The debt number came, or the deficit number came out. We're already past $1 trillion in debt, not even 6 months through the fiscal year.
Right.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking at the stock market yesterday, I'm like, okay, this is one of those days where I go, I can't figure out what's going on.
Well,
I think S&P was up, right?
Yeah, the S&P has,
Dow Jones down.
And Dow Jones is down, but it's it is going to be a mixed bag, I think, until the thing on the tariffs is settled. I just don't know when that's going to be. The back and forth is going to continue because, one escalation, well, then you're going to get another escalation. I mean, the Babylon Bee kind of covering that. 2 times infinity plus 1, So but I think everyone's just saying basically, all right, whatever you're going to do, tariffs or not, just do it and let's get it behind us.
Yeah.
Right.
There's
the back and forth, the uncertainty is
right. There has to
the
be
problem.
There has to be a decision made.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's where everything is right now.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. Well, the continuing resolution will Schumer shut down the government. We had played earlier Rand Paul on the continuing resolution saying, look, it's exactly what we had brought up, the challenge that they face. And the challenge is inside the Republican Party because Democrats really don't want to cut.
Right.
But you have, for example, Representative Massey who didn't vote for the bill, and Trump said that he – and I would tell you this. I talked to a lot of my Republican friends yesterday, and they were like, why does Trump want to primary Massey? Doesn't he want to do the same thing as Trump and cut? It can be disappointed in him because you're trying to win this one and then get to that point. But is Massey really the enemy where the president should publicly ostracize him? It comes from Republican friends who, by the way, are massive Trump supporters.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I've seen from at least all my Republican friends, again, is the whole thing on Canadian tariffs. And I did ask the question to all of my Republican friends yesterday. I made sure I contacted all of them saying, what do you think about making Canada the 51st state? Everyone, no. And I think, was it Lutnick out there yesterday? Saying it again, the 51st state thing. He said it with a smile on his face. But Levitt the day before, and Trump doesn't smile anymore when he says it.
Right.
It comes across as serious. And as we said yesterday, shut up. No Republican, not one Republican wants Canada as the 51st state. And if one Republican tells you they do, they're a Democrat. Why? Simple.
The numbers.
Simple. The Electoral College. Canada becomes the biggest American state in the Union with 40 million people. Mm-hmm. They are bigger than California. If you want to take, and you can estimate that the liberalism of Canada is the same as California, right?
Mm-hmm.
Except for Alberta, but overall it is. And when you look at California with 52 members of Congress, 43 are Republicans.
Yep.
Excuse me, 43 are Democrats.
Yeah.
Only 9 are Republicans.
Yeah.
Out of the 52.
Right.
So if you extrapolate that out, well, if you look at that, you say, well, my gosh, whoa. That means there's a 34. If you look at the net, it's 34 advantage Democrat from California. If Canada became a state, Eric figured it out, 57 members of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
So roughly 40, if you take the same ratio of California, 40. Was it 40 or was it more? I'm trying to think of what it was. Because it was even a greater net. It was more. It was like 45, 46, because it was like a 40 net is what we got, right?
Yeah.
40 net, 35 to 40 more Democrat congressmen added gain to the House. Republicans don't win the House for decades, if that's the case.
They don't win the White House.
They don't win the White House either because of the Electoral College. They don't win the White House. And plus, there's 2 more Democrat senators. That's why I say not one Republican agrees with Trump on that. Not one. Otherwise, you're a Democrat because you want the Democrats in power.
Right. Yeah, it would be the end of the Republican
Right.
power for quite some time,
And
if not forever.
And if it's a joke, and it wasn't a joke when Levitt said it yesterday, as we said, or 2 days ago, wasn't a joke.
Nope.
That was her first thing justifying the tariffs was, well, then they should become the 51st state. That was the first answer she gave. She was shaky that day. The funny thing is, as we call them, the always Trumpers were, what a great job she did. And she didn't do a great job.
That wasn't a good day.
It wasn't a good day. And when that's the first thing you come out with to justify it, you've got a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah.
Canada, there's no problem if you join us and make the United States a liberal bastion for the next 50 years.
Yeah, no,
That's what I'm promoting as the Republican president of the United States.
Yeah. No, thank you.
It's like, stop it. Stop the stupidity. Stop it. Stop it now. It's stupid. But when it comes to the continuing resolution and all that, let's hear from Mark Wayne Mullen yesterday, giving the sort of the opposite point of view of Rand Paul, who says, I'm not going to vote for it because no aspect of DOGE applies here. It's all the spending of Biden. Here's Senator Mark Wayne Mullen from Oklahoma on CNN.
For me, we have leftovers. This should have been taken care of October 1st. Chuck Schumer never brought a spending bill to the floor. He had every one of them by July 31st. He refused to hear one appropriation bill, not one. So now we have leftovers that we got to deal with from the Biden administration. How long do we deal with that? We're not going to balance the budget off of when we're 6 months into this to this FY25, which ends September 30th. At some point, we need to cut the umbilical cord from the Biden administration, say, okay, we can't deal with your mess anymore. We need to be looking to the policies and to the fiscal responsibility that Trump can bring. And so that's FY26. So the longer we deal with FY25, which is what we're doing right now, which should have already been taken care of, mind you, on October 1st, the longer we do it, the more it distracts us from delivering what the American people wanted November 3rd.
Did Republicans get anything out of this?
Out of this? Not
because you're also voting for the same levels that Biden and Schumer.
Of course, I understand that completely, but I want to start focusing on Trump's policies. I want to quit dealing with Biden's policies. We can't. It's a distraction right now. Okay, let's go ahead, pass it. Let's fund it for the rest of the year. Start working on Trump's policies through Trump's appropriations with a Republican-led House and a Republican-led Senate with a Republican-led White House. Because that's where we can get change. You're not going to affect change halfway through a fiscal year already that the money was spent by Biden and that administration. We can make real change in FY26.
Now, they could cut it if they wanted to. They've chose not to. They could still cut some of it for the second half of the year. But Chip Roy, I guess, is saying the same thing. Let's get the one thing through so Americans know that we can govern, and then you deal with it for fiscal year 2026, and I would say also in the reconciliation for the 10-year budget bill.
Yeah. Right.
And you would agree with me on that. The problem and challenge they face is if they don't do it, it is going to be their own party that helps to sink not helps to sink the DOGE effort if Republicans don't put some of the DOGE cuts in. And this is because the administration, through Elon Musk, has promoted this week, beginning of this week, we have cut $4 billion a day. Well, you multiply that by 365, you come up with $1.46 trillion. You say you've saved already, and no benefits have been hit. Nobody's losing a benefit. If that is accurate, those conservatives, those maybe 6, 7 conservatives aren't going to vote with you on October 1st. So you've got to start putting some of them in. Otherwise, you're going to lose their vote.
Yeah.
And you're going to need Democrats to win, which means even more spending. And at that point, you have to ask the question, if they can't do it, partly in the reconciliation bill, again, the reconciliation bill is for 10 years, and they could still change that for FY 2026. But if you don't get something done this year, if you can't get it done in the first year, DOGE is dead.
Well, it's over if you're not gonna get a significant move on DOGE items, especially when you're promoting. We've got all of these savings that will affect no one if we cut.
Yeah.
So,
and it will be your own party. Won't be Democrats, because Democrats
no.
Democrats, as Chip Roy said this week, where the Democrats apparently in the House were talking, well, you're not cutting enough. The deficit's too bad. He goes, I'm looking forward to seeing show us your bill where you plan on cutting, because you don't have one.
No.
So it's going to be the infighting between Republicans, but it's going to be the standard set by the administration. Trump has to back the cuts come October 1st.
Yep.
For the next fiscal year 2026, which will be his first budget. He has to include DOGE cuts. And if he signs a bill that doesn't have some DOGE cuts, where you're not heading at least in that direction, DOGE is dead.
Yeah,
the whole year will be wasted.
No use to carry on through July of next year.
Right.
At all. Because at that point, you're just talking the talk.
And it's because of the standard that you set through DOGE, which is, by the way, and I'm not accusing him of doing anything because nothing's been done yet.
Right.
I'm just saying this is the challenge they face, because that will be the Republican Party that will wish to hold them to the DOGE standard. Democrats aren't going to hold them to the DOGE standard, but the DOGE standard right now is you say you've cut without anybody losing a benefit off the budget, off the spending, almost $1.5 trillion. Well, if you truly have, you've just you've almost got rid of the entire deficit.
Yeah.
Which means you can get interest rates to come down. And that's just now. You say you've got more. You say you've got $2 trillion.
Right. Right.
Well, somebody's going to want to see some cuts here.
Well, especially if you've made the case this week, because the president does have the power to pull votes together. He demonstrated that this week, with the exception of Massey. And it was known by everybody. Okay, he's making calls. It was very open. They were very open about it. So is that going to be the approach when you really have to get to it? And you've told these Republicans that want to cut, you're going to fight the fight down the road. We'll do the cuts later. Well, when it comes to later, is it going to be the same approach? It has to be one or the other. We're either going to do this or just shut it down and let's go back to the same thing, because there's no difference in the behavior of the GOP if it's all talk. Because you've got a national conversation right now about spending cuts, thanks to DOGE. That's new. That wasn't happening on this level during the campaign season.
No.
So now you've got this momentum here. People know you've got to make cuts. Yes, it's hard to make cuts, but we're told that DOGE is finding $4 billion a day that doesn't affect people. Well, then you should be able to make the cuts.
As I said, DOGE is the gutsiest thing that an American president has done domestically.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't follow through with the actual cuts, it will be one of the worst things ever done,
right?
Because we'll never solve the budget problem.
Right. Because if you can't do it now, it will never be done.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Why you can justify your dislike of MSNBC coming up here, giving you a perfect example. Trade deficits and what happens. When you have a trade deficit, what happens?
Right.
Nobody ever talks about what happens with those dollars.
Right.
Because that's important, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because the president saying a trade deficit is bad.
Right.
Right? Trade deficit with any country is bad. Why is it bad? What precisely is it? This is something that really isn't talked about a lot. What happens to those dollars? Okay, we buy something, they get the American dollar. What do they do with it? Why is it bad if they hold the dollar? What do they do with the dollar that makes it bad for the United States? We'll get into what happens to those dollars coming up. I happen to see a column by a professor at the Wharton Business School. I'm like, oh, we haven't talked about that. We've talked about it many times before. We haven't talked about it here lately. And it's you've got to make sure that when you talk tariffs, when you talk trade, that you bring up, well, what happens if you have a trade deficit? What happens if you have a trade imbalance? What precisely makes it wrong economically to have a trade deficit or a trade surplus? Right. How does it harm your country, or how does it help your country? And get into precisely economically what happens to those dollars, because that's what makes it good or bad, right?
Right.
So we'll get to that coming up.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Thanks so much for being here. You know, I wanted to say this about a week ago. We just got so busy on other topics. But when DOGE first started, weeks ago, one of the things that would happen is any type of mistake that would be made, the Democrats would use as justification of why this is wrong.
Right.
Why you have to stop it. And I kept thinking of the old saying that perfection is the enemy of progress.
Mm-hmm.
That if you do not attempt to do anything because you want perfection, if perfection is what keeps you from doing everything, that I must be 100% correct on everything or I don't move forward, well, then nothing would get done in our society.
Right.
And I just wanted to make that note because apparently the public understands that, because they still back the Republicans on DOGE.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. So it didn't work for the Democrats trying to say, oh, you got this wrong or you got that wrong. Yeah, but we corrected it.
Yeah.
As soon as it was brought to our attention, that was corrected.
Right.
Yeah, but that can't happen. You can't make any mistakes. If you make any mistake, then the whole thing, if you make any mistakes, even all the mistakes that have been corrected, it doesn't matter. You can never make a mistake. This is the best part. Democrats making the case, you can never make a mistake in government policy or you don't move forward. That coming from Democrats.
Yeah. Yeah, it's let's go back and revisit inflation and how it's transitory. Was that a mistake or a lie? Inflation is good because it means
good for you. Yeah.
People are spending more money. All of these things. It's a human endeavor, and as they go through, and you know, especially when we talk about massive government bloat and fraud, well, yeah, you're going to have some issues, and you're going to have to backtrack on a couple of those issues now and then. People get that. They understand it. Now, what you'll need going forward, though, is clarity. This is why I think it's important. All right, if the $4 billion a day, which was announced the other day by Elon Musk, in savings is accurate, you need to promote that more.
Yeah.
Not just in the one setting. It needs to be repeated everywhere by everybody in the party. The problem is you get to the first spending bill, the CR, the continuing resolution, and it doesn't reflect anything from DOGE yet. Okay, well, eventually then, all right, great. The battle is down the road. Eventually you got to get to it. The point being is, because there have been some questions as to whether or not that $4 billion is accurate. Let's say it's $2 billion. That's still a massive amount. Again, accompanied by the thought that, and what was conveyed in the interview, these cuts wouldn't affect anyone. So if you've actually got that, even half that, then you put it to work because nobody's going to be affected by it.
Well, the thing is, because I went right to the Department of Government Efficiency, and this is the thing, the question that we have that nobody has even questioned. I haven't heard anybody question it. We got the $4 billion right now. He said we're saving $4 billion a day. Right now, the savings are $4 billion a day, which we figured out was $1.46 trillion. Then you go to the DOGE website. Estimated savings, $115 billion. One doesn't match to the other.
Exactly.
If you're in a marketing campaign to do something, the left side needs to verify what the right side is doing.
Yes.
And it's not doing it. It doesn't make any sense.
Right.
And again, you got to be careful what you're saying. And if you're giving this incredible hope to people, because you think about it, in the first 6 weeks, without cutting anything, if you've saved $1.46 trillion, you've solved most of the fiscal problems. And if you're saying you've done it without having to take away a benefit from anybody, that would be unprecedented in showing the waste and fraud that exists out there.
You've also promoted in recent weeks giving people a $5,000 tax rebate.
You notice they've stopped that, though.
They stopped it.
Yeah.
The point being, don't float it.
Right.
Don't put it out there unless you know you can stand on it, unless there is absolute sure footing.
And you do it every single day then. If it's true.
Exactly.
If it's
every day.
It's a $4 billion a day, then you put out the memo to Congress. Here it is. Promote it. We're saving this. Congress should be out there saying, look, we can't get it done now, but you know something? Mark Wayne
This is
Mullen
what's
should have
coming.
been talking about
Yep.
it. We verified it. It's $1.46 trillion that we've saved right now. Do you know what we're going to be able to do in the continuing resolution? And come October 1st, you're going to see massive cuts because they don't affect anybody and doesn't take away anybody's benefits. You'd be promoting it. To throw it out there and let it sit there and nobody really talks about it after that, and then to throw out, and our goal is to give $5,000 back, the DOGE dividend, and then nobody's talking about it a week later. If you've got it, you market that every single day. You pound it down people's throats.
And if you don't have it, shut up.
Yeah, exactly.
Because the momentum here is real. The entire concept behind DOGE is absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Don't
love it.
wreck
Yeah.
it.
Right, exactly. And be honest about it.
Because if it is true, if it's accurate, then everybody promote it and get it done. If it's not true, you're wrecking credibility and everyone needs to pipe down. Because there's something that's off here. There's something that's not driving. I can't tell you what that is.
I can only tell you what they tell me.
Right.
Right?
Well, you just pointed out.
We're not making up the numbers.
The $4 billion a day doesn't jive with the DOGE website.
No, it doesn't.
So either update the website to reflect it or start promoting where you actually are. And because this is the thing. The reason I bring up the $5,000, dividend rebate is because that kind of thing politically, you're looking at, oh my gosh, look at what they're finding and look what that could mean to me and my family. Now, did the majority of people buy into it? Are they expecting it? I can't tell you, but there's a reason you said it. There's a reason you're promoting it, the whole idea of it, because you're trying to rally everyone behind it, to give them direct interest in these cuts. And we can have the debate of whether it should be rebates or whether it should be straightening out the budget. The whole $36 trillion thing still bothers me. Call me old school. But it has to be a consistent message. One of the things about the Trump comeback in 24 is that everybody was on point. Every surrogate was on point. Like I haven't seen with a Republican Party in a long time. Don't wreck that. Don't ruin that. Don't ruin that in the biggest way, which would mean eventually and effectively that we're never going to get this fiscal matter solved until it just finally implodes. Because if it can't be done now with the momentum coming in January 20th of this year, then I have zero confidence of it ever getting done.
Yeah, that's the thing, too. If it's not done now, if we can't make movement on it now, we never will. And our point is, when you come out and say $5,000, when you come out and say $4 billion a day, we're in savings, and go, okay, it's easy to multiply. Well, that's $1.46 trillion. Oh my God! Well, right now with 111 or whatever's 112 billion, that equals $717 a person. Well, if you've got, my God, 15 times that, then you've got the $5,000 there. Promote the daylights out of it. We can either give $5,000 or pay down the debt this amount. Once you market, once you come out with that figure, you need to be prepared to market the daylights out of it day in and day out. Democrats have never done this. Look what we're doing. And you market it every single day.
Right.
Well, they market it for, a week, and then they drop it, move on to something else.
Right.
Why?
Right. And why is it everybody fully on board across the board? Because, again, if we're told it's not going to affect everyone or anyone if we make these cuts, well, then we know why Democrats wouldn't be on board. The GOP. There should be, yesterday you saw it. The Democrats were using verbatim, posting the exact same statement.
Yeah,
all of them.
Yep. Over 50 House members posted the exact same paragraph and talking
Well,
points.
you wouldn't need to write it for the Republican Party.
No.
Again, if all of this is accurate and everything jives. I can't tell you what's happening, but something doesn't add up.
Well, we're not making up anything. We're just telling you what they're telling us.
Right.
And saying, okay, well, this doesn't match that.
Right.
Well, why doesn't it? And if you've got these savings, why isn't it being talked more about the reconciliation bill? And if you can't do it for the continuing resolution, why aren't you promoting the daylights out of what you're going to do October 1st, including the president? The president, Congress, Mike Johnson, standing together saying, we have made these cuts. No one's benefits are being cut. Things are being affected. People are losing jobs and things like that. But the concern of the American public is, are they losing their benefits?
Right.
Are they losing Social Security, Medicare, and in some cases, Medicaid is what they wonder. That is the concern right there. Well, if you're saying nobody's affected by any of it, and you've cut almost $1.5 trillion, and you're only 6 weeks into it, well, you should be marketing that. You should never shut up about it, ever.
Right. And everybody should be fully on board. You wouldn't need to. They wouldn't need to all copy each other on the exact statement like the Democrats were doing yesterday on this. You would be able to talk about it openly and promote it. You would want to promote nothing else.
And don't say absolutely, we've got $5,000, we're going to give a dividend. You don't know if you're going to give the dividend. You got to get through Congress. What you say is, we have now saved $5,000, per taxpayer. We can
That's a big deal.
We can give you or $6,000 or $7,000, whatever it is. Hey, we're going to give you part of that back. What it is, Congress will have to decide, but we could give you $2,000 or $3,000 and still take.
That's how it relates directly to you. Yes.
Right. We could take $4,000 and pay down the debt, and $4,000 and give it to you. Whatever it would be. We're just throwing out the numbers. You do that and you market the daylights out of it and you say no political party has been able to do this in the history of the United States like this.
Right.
Even close to this level and cut. You market it. If you've got it, you market it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all we're saying. And make sure that the number that you throw out, Elon Musk, when you threw out the $4 billion a day, matches or explain why it doesn't match with what you have on the DOGE website.
Right. It's all about messaging.
It's not up to the taxpayer to figure out what the puzzle is.
Right. In fact, they shouldn't have to figure anything because everybody on the right is talking about it nonstop.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
And everybody's saying the same thing.
866-90 Red Eye.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. We go to Jake in Oregon about DOGE. Hi, Jake. You're on Red Eye Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I love what you're talking about with DOGE. And I guess when it first came out, I was glad because Vivek Ramaswamy was part of that with Elon Musk. And I think what a problem that DOGE is facing is that Elon himself, God bless him, is a brilliant man. But he's not a good spokesperson to be able to get in front of a camera and be able to talk like Vivek would have been able to do had he been with it. And like you guys have been saying, all of a sudden you don't hear about this $5,000 anymore, but yet on various websites, people are still talking about it, using the term, well, if the left doesn't want that $5,000, give it to me, I'll take it. But they're not conveying a strong message because Elon himself is not a good messenger. That's just my thoughts on it, guys.
Well, I think Musk was the one that first mentioned it, and then the president picked up on it. Mm-hmm. And then they did go to members of Congress who said, well, we're way to even discuss something like that is way, way premature because we have no idea what the amount they'll actually be able to cut is.
Yeah, thanks, Jake.
But you're right. I would have we said this about a week ago, I'd like Ramaswamy, I wish he was there too, to explain it. But you can solve that by getting a great spokesperson for DOGE.
Yeah, I think there's that, and there also needs to be a clear understanding by everybody involved. The message needs to be the same, because I believe the GOP is on board with what DOGE is doing. But then the process of engaging in those cuts and everything else comes down to just a handful of Republicans that really want to get things done. So when you're saying something like $4 billion a day and it won't affect anyone, well, then no one in the GOP would be against it. Yeah. Well, you can't make that case. This is what became very clear to me almost immediately when you talk about how the CR came together with the GOP and couple that with what Elon Musk was saying on the $4 billion a day. Well, the GOP doesn't buy it. They don't. There's something that's not. The DOGE website doesn't buy it. There's something not jiving with that, and there needs to be clarity on it.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here this morning. Let's head to Don in Pennsylvania about DOGE. Don, welcome. You're on Red Eye Radio. Hi.
Good morning, guys. Love the show.
Thanks.
Explain to me. I'm just a truck driver, not an accountant. But if DOGE is about saving money and taking it out of the budget and stopping us from spending money and wasting it, where's the money coming from to do this $5,000 rebate?
Well, see, that's the either or that they don't explain.
Make a decision, guys.
Yeah, exactly. they exactly the way we said. They've got to, because here's what you do. You say this equals $5,000 per taxpayer. So imagine that you've overpaid by $5,000. We all know everybody understands. Now what we can do is decide as a nation, are we going to give that back to the people, or are we going to trim our budget and try and get some of this debt taken care of?
Hold on, stop right there. If you're going to give it back to the people, where's the money coming from to give it back to the people? Where are you giving it back from? You're not spending it.
Oh, no, you can't. That's the thing. You can't do both. That's exactly what we said at the beginning of this.
Okay.
Because you don't change the spending if you give the money back to the people, but the people would, the whole political idea is, well, I've got my taxpayer dollars back. As a taxpayer, I have that $5,000 back, but you're not changing the budget.
But Don's, I think the point Don's bringing up is, if we're $2 trillion in the hole and you cut $2 trillion, you're simply cutting. You're simply not owing anymore. You're simply saving what we're borrowing.
You're doing something different with the money. You're still spending it.
Which is a great
that's what I was
point.
saying. Yeah.
And the members of Congress said that a couple of weeks ago. They went, well, we still have debt. You're giving them money. You'd still be borrowing money to give them a rebate back.
Right.
And maybe that's why they stopped promoting it.
Well, because it doesn't do anything about the budget.
I'm glad you called, Don, to clarify that, because it is pretty humorous. If you got $2 trillion in debt and you cut $2 trillion and you say we're going to give that money all back, well, you're borrowing that money to give it back to the taxpayer. You're actually not giving them back their money.
You're still spending it. You're just doing something different with it.
Right.
And that's
it's like going shopping and buying something. It's like going shopping, buying something on a sale. Look how much money I saved.
Right.
No, you spent less.
You spent less, but you still spend money. Exactly.
You still spend money, right?
Exactly.
Yes. No, that's a great point. Right. Exactly.
Thanks, Don. We appreciate it. Thank you. Drive safe.
Right.
But that's something, that we mentioned when they first started talking about this. Well, wait a minute. That's not the point of all this. Point of all this isn't to get a tax rebate. That doesn't change anything in spending.
Yeah, but it's good politically.
Well, no, that's what they thought it was going to be good politically. But the wonks were saying, whoa, what are we doing here?
Well, where I saw was the members of Congress that first came out and said, well, wait a minute. We got $2 trillion. If you're saving $2 trillion, all you'd be giving back people, you'd be giving back people money.
You're still spending it.
That you're borrowing from future generations.
Exactly. You're not doing anything. Right. You're not changing anything. Right. And that's what most of us looked at it and said, well, that's, first of all, getting that done to that point, it was laughable. It's just not going to. What you can say, though, politically, is this amounts to $5,000 per taxpayer.
Right.
And we can't put this on the back of taxpayers and future taxpayers. We need to cut this so that we're not doing this in the future. And we need to have a balanced budget. We need to have an effort to draw down the debt, the national debt. And this is all doable. And you show them how. That's the entire point.
One thing I want to make sure we get to is, because I promised to bring it up, is when it comes to a trade and when it comes to a budget deficit versus a budget surplus. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that I'm really amazed that the American public allows the discussion to be had without ever asking, for example, you say a budget deficit's bad because they're giving us the product and we're giving them money, and therefore it's bad for us because we're not producing it, right?
Right.
So it's bad. But then you look at it, as we've broken it down many times, and said, okay, but wait a minute. They're getting pieces of paper. We're getting a product that we use to make our lives and our economy more efficient and productive. They get the dollars back.
Right.
They get a piece of paper.
Right.
Or digital currency, whatever you want to call it. It used to be a piece of paper, but now it's digital currency. What does that do?
They're getting the Amero.
Right. And so again, the Amero. So I happen to read, and we've explained it before, because there's only really a few things you can do with the money. Mm-hmm. If you're a company over there, you get the money. There's only a few things you can do with it. You can either buy something, American good or service. You can either buy bonds, buy normally short-term treasury bills because they don't want to invest too long in it, or go into the American stock market and invest it in American companies. It's really all you could do. You could let it sit, but nobody's going to just let it sit.
Right.
And so you had Professor Jeremy Siegel of the University of Pennsylvania's Wharton School and Chief economist at Wisdom Tree, gave the example. This example is, suppose an American buys a $40,000 Toyota made in Japan. Toyota has three options for what to do with these dollars. It can buy $40,000 worth of U.S. goods and services, in which that case there would be no trade deficit, right?
Right.
Or because it expects the American economy to grow, it can invest $40,000 in U.S. capital, say the S&P 500, U.S. government bonds, or American real estate. It can also temporarily invest the funds in short-term interest-bearing assets such as treasury bills, commercial paper, or bank deposits that enhance the lending capabilities of American financial institutions and fund short-term corporate borrowing needs. What if Toyota doesn't want to buy a U.S. good or asset? Well, then it can sell the dollars on the foreign exchange market. People purchase dollars either because they want to buy U.S. goods or assets or because they think the dollar will appreciate in value. But even if these dollars are held for speculation, they are usually invested in short-term interest-bearing assets. And if the dollars flowing abroad are held as physical currency, the U.S. still benefits since these notes are incorporated and considered part of the national debt, but you accrue no interest on it, essentially an interest-free loan to the U.S. government. If there were too many dollars flowing abroad, because this is the whole point, how would you know if a trade deficit is bad? When does it get bad? No one ever answers that question. Trade surplus, trade deficit. What does that mean? If there's a trade deficit, it means there's a ton of capital out there from foreign investors that they wish to invest in the United States, which is capital for our corporations.
Right.
There is no zero-sum game where we get the product, they get the paper dollar, and nothing else ever happens from it.
Right.
Because nobody ever explains. The president has never explained. But the same thing happened, whether it was Bush or whoever put in, any type of tariff out there. They never explain, except for the fact of job losses in certain industries, why it's bad. Because the money comes back and is invested right into the United States to help service our debt. I wish the debt wasn't there, but it helps service the debt. Mostly short term, though, but it goes into other bonds. It goes into real estate. It goes into U.S. corporations, into the stock market. The money comes back. It has to come back to help the United States. So how do you know when you have too much of a trade deficit? As we've always said in the show, and the professor here from University of Pennsylvania's Wharton Business School says the same thing, when the value of the dollar goes down. That's how you know. If there were too many dollars flowing abroad, the value of the dollar would sink on the foreign exchange market. That isn't the case today. In fact, demand has been so strong that despite the nearly $1 trillion trade deficit, the value of the dollar keeps going up year after year. And it's on the strength of the economy. And foreign investors, if the dollar wasn't worth anything, they wouldn't sell you the car.
Right.
And the dollar is worth something because the American economy continues to grow, so they invest it back into the United States. And he writes, it's important that the U.S. push for fair trade, which the Trump administration is doing, and that means if somebody is engaged in unfair trade practices, China, for example. But the trade deficit is not always a product of unfair trade policies. It also emerges because foreigners want to participate in the exceptional opportunities provided by U.S. capital markets. Imposing the excessive tariffs to curb the trade deficit staunches foreign demand for U.S. assets, leading to lower stock prices and higher interest rates for U.S. firms and consumers. There's less capital.
Right. Yeah. And when you get into the protectionist policy, you get into picking the winners and losers. That's whether it's industry or companies, and it's been done by a number of presidents.
Right here, this because we normally you don't hear of the victims of tariffs. Steve Martinez, you talked about this yesterday, small businesses, and the day before I think you talked about it too. The Idaho-based general contractor spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on materials like lumber, windows, cabinets, and steel to stockpile them before the tariffs hit. He now has nearly a third more of these supplies compared with last year, and he is renting out shop yards to stockpile these goods, which his suppliers often import from Canada, Mexico, and China, that could rise in price under tariffs. Since his lenders will not finance these extra purchases, he's paying out of pocket using cash that he has earmarked for hiring more staff or funding new projects. He felt prepared. He was ready. He stocked up. The tariffs are coming when Trump imposed the tariffs last week. Then, after the president abruptly walked them back, Martinez was left with a horrible business plan, less cash, and feeling confused about what to do next. I can't keep ping-ponging back and forth. He's a small business person. He doesn't know what to do. And that's the whole point when they start talking the stupid talk about Canada becoming a 51st state with the tariffs and everything else. This is serious. Small business is being hurt. They don't know where the hell you're going.
Well, and that's the thing. They don't have that kind of leverage, as mentioned here, in lending, and you wouldn't want to build that kind of debt if you're a small business anyway.
Right.
So you have no choice but to put your cash over here in supplies, and then everything is rolled back, and you're oversupplied, and you have no cash.
And they said the construction industry is going through a critical period right now. New housing is in extreme demand to address the prolonged housing shortage, which is more than 7 million units by some estimates. New construction is vital to solving some of the country's deepest economic challenges. And then they go through lumber. That they're stockpiling lumber like crazy and buying it, expecting the tariffs to come in, and then it's going back and forth. They don't know what to do. They don't know with this inventory. And these are small contractors, medium contractors.
Yep.
And that's why, again, if you're serious, be serious about it. Don't start talking stupid talk about Canada becoming the 51st state, because Americans are hurting because of this. You claim that you're going to do good. They're confused. You're saying this is all going to do good, and they're saying where?
Well, this is one example of the uncertainty.
Yeah.
Businesses have to plan. Every corporation, every company, big or small, has to plan for what the government is going to do. That's part of your business plan. What is the regulation? What is the tariff? What's the policy? And the moment it changes, your plans change.
But it's not, our point is, it's not funny. Stop at the 51st state stuff. It's not happening.
Whatever you're going to do,
wants it.
Get it done.
And be serious about it and explain to the American people. Don't be throwing out crap about Canada becoming the 51st state.
Right.
It's not funny anymore. People like Mr. Martinez are being hurt. If you're going to do it, do it.
Right. Whatever you're going to do.
Right, but don't keep these people ping-ponging back and forth day in and day out. Have a consistent damn message.
Right.
So the American people and these construction companies don't hurt. It's not funny anymore.
No.
It's not a joke. Do one damn thing or another.
That's it. If you're going to do it, then do it.
Right. 866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Yeah, I mean, when Levitt said it 2 days ago, the first answer to the tariffs was if Canada becomes a 51st state. Trump said it again the other day. Lutnick said it yesterday. It needs to stop. It gets me angry. There are many small businesses that don't know what the heck's going on. Stop with the foolishness. If you're going to do the tariffs, do the tariffs. If the tariffs are good, do them, and then deal with the consequences. If they're not, then don't do them. But quit playing the game of going back and forth. You're hurting American business.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.